First-year students at a university participate in an experiment conducted in 3 sessions, each a week apart. The first 2 sessions consist of learning exercises. The third, during the third week, is a test session. The learning topic: calculating the volume of 4 complex solids, an inclined cylindrical trunk, a spheroid, a spherical cone, and a half cone. The learning module for the first 2 weekly sessions includes 1 written tutorial per solid, so that's 4 tutorials in total, and 4 exercises per solid. That's a total of 16 exercises. Students are randomly divided into 2 groups. The first group studies the tutorial on the inclined cylindrical trunk and then practices the 4 exercises related to that solid. Then they read the second tutorial and practice the 4 exercises for that second solid, and so on for the remaining solids. The second group, however, studies all 4 tutorials without doing any exercises. Once they have finished, they do the 16 practice exercises, but these exercises are randomized. It means that the first 4 exercises each pertain to a different solid, in contrast to the treatment of students in the first group who did the first 4 exercises on only one solid. So with these students, the next 4 exercises also tested 4 different solids, and so on until the 16th exercise. As mentioned earlier, they repeat the same practice session 1 week after the first session. So during the training in the first 2 weeks, those 2 first sessions, the first group performs better with an average score of 80% of the practice exercises gotten correct, compared to second group that only gets 60% of the practice exercises correct. So this seems to indicate that the first group is assimilating or learning better the material than the second group. However, when the 2 groups are tested that third week, the first group only achieves 20% correct answers. And guess the percentage of correct answers for the second group? 30%? No. 40? No. 50? Still no. 60%? No. Well, the second group achieves an average of 63% correct responses. Counterintuitive? Yes. In the first video of the series, I introduced what should be the basic strategy of any learning process: self-testing. So time is wasted when one reads and rereads a lesson, a formula, or essay examples, or words in a new language, unless it is for understanding. Once understood, one should stop rereading. This second video in the series, based on the book Make It Stick: The Science of Successful Learning, discusses 3 key characteristics any learning approach should have. Self-testing must be spaced, interleaved, and varied. The opening experiment was an example of the effectiveness of interleaving. Spacing. The experiment of psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus, which I discussed in the first video of the series, demonstrated how and why we forget. If you recall, I explained how spaced recall efforts each time reset the forgetting curve and also flatten it. In fact, spacing allows a crucial and vital thing to happen for learning: forgetting. And forgetting is vital for the exercise, the recall effort, to help remember in the long run. When we try to retrieve memories of what we previously learned, our brain makes an additional cognitive effort. This effort maps the path to retrieve what we forgot. And this is precisely what flattens the forgetting curve after a certain number of repetition, or should I say, a certain number of spaced repetition, eventually completely eliminating forgetting. Not allowing a bit of forgetting to happen keeps the information in short-term memory. Consider this example. An experiment is conducted on 38 resident surgeons during their microsurgery training. The experiment focuses on a course designed to teach them how to reconnect tiny blood vessels, usually arteries or veins less than 3 millimeters in diameter, what's called a microvascular anastomosis. The researchers divided our surgeons into two groups, as they typically do. The first follows and practices the course, which consists of 4 short sessions in 1 day. That's normal teaching pace. But the second group follows the course, but each small part is spaced a week apart. The duration and the content of each part remains the same. The course remains the same. 1 month later, students are tested on a live anesthetized rat. Result: the second group achieves incomparably better results than the first group in terms of time taken, efficiency and success of the surgery, number of movements, and overall evaluations by experts. The experiment led the medical school to revise its teaching system. You can find the reference for the experiment in the PDF summarized in the video in the description. So here's the lesson. To properly integrate knowledge, the brain must go through a process that requires forgetting and recall, which therefore requires time. But it's not time to read and reread, but time between tests. The more you forget about something, the more relearning it will durably strengthen your learning. It is counterintuitive and requires effort, but it works. Interleaving. During spaced practice tests, interleaving involves mixing different components or aspects, or even different subjects or concepts that are part of a larger knowledge structure. Counterintuitive? That is exactly what the researchers did for the second group in the opening experiment. Do you remember? Make a recall effort. The example of the solids. How did they do for the second group? They interleave the exercises on different solids for the second group. That's why it's called interleaving. In the example, calculating the volume of solids is the main concept, the larger knowledge structure. The different solids are the element allowing mastery of the higher concept in that hierarchy. And you can find the reference for the experiment also in the one-page PDF summarizing the video in the description. Here is the lesson, especially when one wants to learn a skill that requires mastering certain steps or sub-steps. Learning in order will be intuitive, quick, without much effort. However, the integration of information will be superficial. Here is what one could try. Learn the first step without fully mastering it, move the next to the last, then return to an intermediate step and just go through all the steps in a random fashion. You could systematize the process with software. I'll talk about systems in a later video of the series. You'll seem to learn nothing first. You'll appear confused at the beginning, but that's precisely the point. You'll have learned. You will make more cognitive effort to search for differences, to differentiate, to discriminate, which will truly anchor the knowledge in your brain and thus make its use flexible and ready to be deployed in various situations. For example, imagine school children who already understand the sub-concepts of addition, subtraction, division, and multiplications. To master how to perform these operations, don't do 20 multiplication exercises until mastery before doing 20 addition exercises, and so on. do 3 addition exercises, 3 subtraction, 2 multiplication, 4 subtractions, 1 addition, and so on, and vary. Obviously, don't expect the school children to learn as fast as if they were doing only 1 at a time. Confusion is necessary at the beginning so that the brain over time learns to differentiate, which at that moment would truly anchor the information, the differences. About 2 years ago, to take the GRE, the Graduate Record Examination, I relearned my multiplication tables using this approach. I had forgotten a good part of them, and moreover, I had mastered them in English, which is not my first language. Instead of learning, for example, perfectly the 7 times table, the 8 times table, the 9 times table, I mixed all of them. It was strange, very slow, and difficult at first, very uncomfortable, but within 2 weeks, I had become very sharp. Got a good score, a fairly good score in the GRE, but also developed other abilities that I could have never developed with the normal way. For example, I'd mastered all the multiplications of 2 digits that give the same number. And when I see a number, I can often visualize the different multiplications of digits that create the number. Variation. When practice is varied, it creates a broad vocabulary to call upon the knowledge or skill. Let's take an example to understand. In a gymnasium, scientists conduct an experiment to train 8 years old to throw small objects into buckets. The first group trains at both 1.5 meters and about 0.5 meters for 12 months. The second group trains with buckets at 1 meter for also 12 months, about a year. The training intensity is the same. The children are randomly divided. Finally, they'll test it at the end of the year with buckets at 1 meter distance. So, given that the second group only trained with buckets at 1 meter distance, intuition suggests that they should outperform the other group who only trained with buckets at 0.5 and 1.5 meters distance. But the exact opposite happened. The first group outperformed the second at the distance for which the second group precisely trained. The variation in the training of the first group predisposed them to achieve a better result compared to the second group. Here is one lesson. If you want to grasp a very complex concept, instead of directly reading your course material, you could go on Wikipedia, read about the history of the concept, understand different formulations, processes, interpretations, critics, and by diversifying your approach that way, you'll have much vocabulary associated with the concept that when you finally study your course material, first, you'll navigate it in a better way, and also you would have created a broad and varied vocabulary, cues to retrieve the knowledge when you'll need it. So, test yourself. Don't just reread. Space out your testing sessions, and during these spaced sessions, vary the type of content, sources, levels of difficulty, positions, places where you are when you're learning these. It's counterintuitive and takes effort, but you can't imagine how much time you save with these principles and the level of mastery you achieve. They improve your discrimination skills, meaning that you can recognize differences because you learned to see them from the start. This makes your learning flexible and adaptable. These strategies may seem inefficient at the beginning, but they work. Thousands of people use them and achieve results that seem like genius. Now, why do they work? To understand, we need to delve into the process by which our brain consolidates knowledge. And this will be the topic of the next video in the series. At the end of this video, you probably feel like you've understood it well, but how can you be sure? Test yourself. Go ahead. You can download the video illustration and summary PDF in the description. Bye.